I'm Charles Allen.
Charles Allen. Charles Allen. Where are you a resident? You are a resident of this neighborhood.
I'm actually a resident of 16th and D Northeast near Rosedale. I am the Democratic nominee to be the next Ward 6 council member.
Okay.
And so I will, more likely than not, will be the incoming council member for this neighborhood.
Okay. Well, then these questions don't necessarily pertain to you.
They do and they don't. I won't be answering as a resident, but as somebody who will be making decisions and representing this neighborhood, and have worked with a lot of folks throughout Southwest for several years.
Okay, well, can you tell me what it is you know about this development, this Greenleaf development, where we're situated now?
Sure. I mean, Greenleaf is a very important part of our housing community in the Southwest neighborhood. Obviously, we have James Creek and Syfax, but Greenleaf is one of the few places where we really have the type of housing that can help accommodate families as well. You know, we have 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units that can really help accommodate and help serve families. A lot of our public housing is frequently 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. This is one of the few places, not just in Southwest, but in the city, that does that. And it's really important as we have to help address all of our housing needs in the city. Greenleaf is a big part of the solution.
And how does this type of housing jibe or relate or mesh with the other forms of housing that are in the surrounding area?
Well, one of the things I find interesting, and probably in not many other neighborhoods will you find a community where residents of both public housing as well as residents not of public housing talk about the value of public housing and are willing to fight and want to defend and help protect the importance of public housing. So for example, when I was campaigning, I'd be going door to door in the neighborhoods immediately around Greenleaf. I would have residents all the time. The first question they'd ask me, it wasn't about retail on 4th Street, it wasn't about Metro, it wasn't about anything else. I got asked point blank all the time, are you going to help make sure we protect public housing in Southwest? And they would point to Greenleaf. So it's a very special, Southwest is a very special neighborhood that really embraces and really wants to see this type of diversity in community, diversity in housing, and realizes that we all have to fight to protect it.
Wow. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. I'm curious about what makes this unique compared to other areas that haven't had that kind of camaraderie.
I don't know if I have the answer to it. You know, I think when you try to think about what makes this unique, where you have that experience, I think a little bit has to do just within the DNA of Southwest. You know, it is a very special neighborhood. It is one that is also very close.
And so small in size.
Small in size. Neighbors see each other and know each other. It's a very stable neighborhood. And so we have very strong civic organizations as well. So when you talk about the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly, you talk about our ANC, these are institutions that have served a broad diversity, that have people who really embrace and understand what diversity means. And so I think that's why you see that in Southwest. It's a really special place, and it is something you don't necessarily always see when we talk in the context of making sure that everyone sees the value of public housing. You don't always see that in every neighborhood. You do in Southwest.
Is there anything missing from this community that you would like to see in place, or things that you're advocating for?
There certainly are a couple things. One is that I think the neighborhood at large, Southwest, continues to need to have more small businesses. I think that it accomplishes two things. Small businesses are important because they serve our needs. So residents have places where they can go. All the time I get people who say, I just need a hardware store. You know, I need to buy a hammer. I just need something. I don't have that in my neighborhood. But our small businesses also create a lot of jobs. When we talk about other neighborhoods, small businesses, more so than your big anchors. You know, I mean, the Safeway is great. We hire Southwest residents at the Safeway. But your small businesses employ a very large number of people from the neighborhood. Because as a small business, you want to know that person can walk to work, they can ride the bike, they can take the bus. They're right in the neighborhood. That's an important part of that. So I really want to work on small businesses in Southwest. That's going to be an important part of what I think I can accomplish.
And what are your views about the development that's planned for Southwest as well?
Well, I went out early on, and because I've worked in South, I mean, I'm not new to Southwest or to the neighborhoods. I've been working for the last 8 to 10 years. I believe very strongly that we've got to have this housing protected. And in the event there's a conversation around any type of future at Greenleaf, the city has to be willing to commit to a build first philosophy. And when I look across South Capitol Street, we can probably point to some things at the Capra Carrollsburg where we say, okay, there's some nice parts of that, but some things that we did wrong, and we, I mean as a city, is that we shut down block after block after block after block of a neighborhood, of a community, and then just moved everybody out, wiped it clean, and then started rebuilding. And we are not done yet. The city has not completed and replaced all those units yet. It's going to be several more years before we do. And as a result, you have really, if you come back 10 years later and tell me I can move back to my home a decade later, a lot happens in a decade. A lot happens in my life in 10 years, as with anybody. And so that's not a true replacement and returning in the spirit in which it should be. So I believe very strongly in a build first, and that in the event that we come to consensus as a community around how we go about that, it has to follow a build first so that housing and residents stay in a community neighborhood. If you wipe it out and then say 10 years later, okay, now it's time to come back, you've decimated the neighborhood. It doesn't exist in the same way it did before.
What can people do to ensure that or fight for that? What strategies can people utilize to make sure that happens?
Well, I think that they are in the process of that right now. I think certainly talking to elected leaders, talking to people who are going to be making a lot of those decisions and getting those commitments, having them understand what the neighborhood needs, I think that's a big part of that. I know that one of my jobs is going to be convincing my colleagues on the council or convincing others in leadership that this is the right decision. I was having a conversation recently with somebody who, I won't say their name, but they're an elected official. And what they asked me was, do we really want to see growth in Southwest? Do we really want to see new businesses get created? Do we really want to see an investment in parks and public spaces? Because if we do that, aren't we going to be putting pressure on public housing? I said, well, yes we will. But isn't that why we're being elected? Isn't that on us? Isn't that part of our job? Is that we're supposed to be there to help protect and fight for and show the value of that housing. When I look at somebody and if they're living next door to a concrete factory, that's not really an amenity for the neighborhood. That's not something that's really improving the quality of their life. If we're working to make sure that there's a great grocery store, there's small businesses creating jobs, there's parks and playgrounds for those kids, there's quality schools, it will put a market pressure on a neighborhood that could increase value and could put a demand on space. That's why we're in this job, is to help fight for and protect that housing, because every resident needs to have that great grocery store, needs to have those small businesses and jobs, needs to have those parks and playgrounds, need to have those schools. I don't say just because it's public housing, we shouldn't be developing anything. I think that we can do both, but that's part of our job. At least that's my view.
Well, thank you. Let me just, the last thing here, just some orienting information. Where are you from originally?
Originally born in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. And you came to the D.C. area when?
I moved to Washington, D.C. in the winter of 2000, 2001.
Where did you go to school?
At home, obviously. In Birmingham, I grew up and went to Homewood High School. And then I went to Washington Lee University in Virginia. Then went and got a master's degree back at University of Alabama in Birmingham in public health. And then moved up here after that.